Hey guys, this is Eric Vasquez here from TeachMeToDesign.com. What I want to do today is show you guys 5 ways that you can improve your work right now. Now this video may be a little bit longer than some of the other ones I've done, but that's okay. I hope you guys will stay with me here because there's some stuff that I think you'll be able to use right away. The first thing I'd like to talk to you about is about the benefit of working with paths. Now you'll see here I already have an image open and ready to go, and I've taken the liberty of tracing around this football player to create a work path. Now one of the benefits of this is that it's much easier to save a JPEG with a work path saved into it than it is a Photoshop file. It'll absolutely save you on file space, and keeping this path handy can come in use in so many different ways. Now from here you'll see that I have the path thumbnail over here in the tab, and the first thing that I want to do in order to isolate this football player from the background is hold down the command key and go ahead and click on the thumbnail. Now you will actually see the path that I've created around this. And yes, it may take you a few minutes to trace around it with the pen tool in order to save the path, but in the long run it's going to save you a lot more time. Now switch back over here to the Layers tab and then go ahead and press Command J. Now you'll see what happened is it basically created a copy of this layer, only filling in the selection from the work path. Alright, so that's very easy, and if I ever need to, I can come back here, click on the work path again, and say I want to make a new layer above it and just fill it with black. I can do that, and now it will be the exact same shape because we're still using the same path. Now why would I do something like this? Well, maybe you want to fill this with a layer, maybe you want to add some shadow to it like this, or you could always use it to create a shadow behind the figure. And here you can't really see anything, but if I were to just come up here and blur this a little bit, you'll see that I'm getting this kind of shadow effect, which can be, very helpful when you want them to pop off of the background. So that's the first thing, using paths. Now another thing to keep in mind, let's say that I just cut this out manually using a mask or simply erasing the background. If you go ahead and click on your selection, you can come back here to the Paths tab and make a work path from that selection. Now you can do this and it may work for you just as well, but it's going to add size. It's going to start to add size to your file. But most of the time I don't think that'll be a big deal. So from here, the next thing I want to show you guys, number 2, is going to be, work smarter. And what I mean by that is use smart objects. So now that I have this player isolated on his own layer, I can go ahead and hold down the control key and say convert to smart object. Now some of you guys may have seen the video that I've done already on the benefits of using smart objects. Now some of the benefits include being able to resize this player several times without actually losing or having any quality loss in the image itself. Now other benefits of this are, as I'll show you guys, being able to double click the smart object, go inside of this file, and then say, you can easily add things inside of the smart object, save it, and then it'll be updated in your main file. Obviously I don't want to add a background in after going through the trouble of removing it, but you can see that you can add as many layers or treat this any way you would normally want to treat it, and then simply save it and have it update back in your main file here. Okay, so that's one of the reasons and one of the ways that you can use smart objects. Another really cool thing about it is being able to use smart filters. I'll show you guys really quickly here what I'm talking about. Say I want to sharpen this image here. You can check the preview on and off and you can see the result in real time. Now you'll notice over here in the layers panel that you actually have your effect below this layer, which you can turn on and off. And if you want to make changes to it, you can simply double click and it should bring back up your settings for that particular filter. Here we go. Alright, so you can come back here, you can mess with all of the settings. There you go. That's what I was trying to do. And you can make changes to it. If I were to simply apply this to a regular raster layer, you're kind of stuck with the settings and you can't really go back and modify them. Now, as I touched on briefly, the next point that I want to make here is number 3, and that is get to know layer masks. Now, what I'm going to do next is just go to one of my other images here, and let's take this field image, for example. Okay? I'm going to bring this into our image here, just use it as a background. Oops, bear with me for a second. Just want to take these out of the tabs. Sometimes they can be a little annoying. Alright, I'm just going to drag this background in, bring it down behind my player smart object. I'm simply going to resize it. Just hold down the shift key and click and drag from any one of those handles to constrain the proportions of your image. Go ahead and hit the enter key. Try to center it, or find a good position. That looks pretty good to me right now. So let's say that I wanted to remove part of this background image. I could come down here and click on the Add Layer Mask icon. And what you could do is then select your gradient tool, make sure you have a black fill that fades to transparent as shown here, and you can simply click and drag down, or from any direction really that you want to remove. If you want to remove the bottom, you can simply drag from the bottom up, or you can do as I did previously and just drag from the top down, right to left. It doesn't really matter. And you can also use a radial gradient, or you can manually go in and use a paintbrush to remove any part of the image that you want. This comes in handy when you're doing photo compositing type of work. Let's say you don't want a crowd in there, you want to replace the crowd, or if you wanted to replace the sky. That's how you would do it. For now, I'm just going to name this layer, and you can start to see some of the benefits of using a layer mask. Here's another cool thing about layer masks. Let's apply one to our smart object. Now you'll notice by default that the layer mask here is basically white, and when I paint in with black, it's going to remove wherever I paint with either my brush or my gradient, which is all good and well. But another way that you can use this is to actually invert the mask by pressing Command-I to invert, and now you'll see that it's black and the figure is completely gone. But what I have to do now is switch the main color, my brush color, to white instead of black, and then I can just bring back in some of the image. If I wanted to just fade him to make it look like he's above the lights or in the background, that would be an easier way, or another way of doing it. But in this example, that's not exactly what I'm going for. That's just one more benefit of using this. Alright, what I'm going to do, I think, is maybe just a quick little vignette in the background here. You can darken the bottom of the image just using that gradient that I was showing you guys. And let's just call it fade here on the bottom. Alright, so that's number 3. Now the next thing that I want to show you guys is adjustment layers. That'll be number 4. Now, if I had this field in the background, let's use that as an example, and I were to just come up here and say filter, or better yet, image adjustments, hue saturation. Now if I wanted to just make this black and white, all I would do is just bring the saturation all the way down. Hit OK. Oh, well now my color layer is completely gone. I've just kind of screwed myself over making this black and white. I mean, you can always undo it, but you can't really make any more changes to the parameters or settings of your adjustment layer. So what I like to do instead is this little icon down here, create new fill or adjustment layer. Down here you'll have all the same options, levels, curves, hue saturation, black and white, and so forth. So for now, let's go back to black and white. We'll do the exact same thing, but you'll see that it's now been added as a layer right here with the other layers. Instead of just applying it to the image, you can just turn this on or off. One thing that I like to do to make the images a little bit more dynamic is to actually change the blending mode of the adjustment layer to say overlay, soft light, and so forth. You can play around with that, and you can also adjust the opacity of that layer. Alright, so let's see another example of this. Come back down here to the adjustment layer icon, and this time we'll try a curves layer. Now you'll notice that it's been added again as a new layer right on top of the layer stack, and I can begin to play around with the settings here of the curves adjustment. Now you'll notice that as I'm doing this, not only is it affecting the player layer, it's affecting everything below. And one way around that is to do something called a clipping mask. An easy way to do that is to just simply move your cursor between the adjustment layer and the layer below. And you'll see over here in the layers panel that it's creating a small, downwards facing arrow. If I click that, it's now added that arrow here, and it's indicating that this effect is only going to be applied to the layer below. So that's one way that you can, prevent it from affecting all of your other layers. So that's a great little tip that I use a lot in my work. And you can put as many of these adjustment layers in here now as you'd like. I can go ahead and do a black and white adjustment layer, and it'll automatically, as long as you're, have a clipping mask applied, it'll automatically go in between those two layers. Now for the black and white layer, you can do the same thing. You can play with blending modes. That's one of the other nice things about using adjustment layers in this way. You could never do this just applying a layer, an adjustment rather, to an image directly. Alright, and lastly, what I want to show you guys is one more quick thing, just to add a little bit more atmosphere to this image. Oops. Now you see what happened here is actually I brought in this new image and it has a clipping mask on it, so you can see that this actually works with images too. It's not exactly what I want, but you could always fill an image with a clipping mask or have a certain texture applied. To get rid of the clipping mask, you can do the same thing. Just hold down the Option or Alt key and click, and there you go. Alright, what I want to do here actually is put this image on top and change it to screen, and this will kind of allow only the light pixels to show through. And this is really cool because we can make it look like it's maybe raining or snowing or what have you inside the stadium here. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and apply an adjustment layer to this image to tweak the levels and get more contrast out of it. So if you hold down the Alt Option key again and then click the adjustment layer icon on the bottom, select levels, it'll ask you, do you want to use the previous layer to create clipping mask? Check that off and say OK. Now you'll automatically have a clipping mask, so that's just one more way that you can add it to your image or your texture. And then I'm just going to bring this in a little bit, and you'll see that it's getting a little bit darker. Something like that. There we go. And we'll just go ahead and call this rain over here in our layers palette. I'm going to add a layer mask to it like I was showing you guys earlier because I want to get rid of this grass on the bottom. So I'm going to change back to my gradient tool, make sure again it's from black to transparent, click from the bottom and drag upwards, and that will fade out the nice texture that we have going there. And that brings me to my last point, guys, which is now that I have all these layers over here, it's really not that many actually, but you kind of get the idea. It can start to get a little out of hand, and it can get crazy pretty quick. So one thing that I like to do is keep files organized. So what you can do is say, hold down the Shift key and click on these three layers, and then I'm going to press Command plus G on the keyboard. And what that does is put these files into a group folder. I'm going to go ahead and name that background, do the same thing with these three layers, call it, player, and then we'll have the top two layers, which is our atmosphere, our rain. And this is just good practice because, if you're ever in a situation where you need to make changes quickly to a file, this is really going to save you a lot of time. If you have 100 layers and you're trying to click through to find one layer, that's gonna take you a while. Or, in the situation where you might have to actually take another person's file and make changes to it, that could be even more, confusing and time consuming because you weren't the one who created the file, therefore making it a little bit more hectic and troublesome to find the right layers. But one of the other benefits of using group folders and keeping things organized is that you can change the opacity or the blending mode of an entire group folder. You'll see here you can tweak it from screen, linear dodge, and you can also double click on these group folders to apply layer styles. Right? I don't really want to make it look like it's raining blood on the poor guy, but you can come in here, you could say add a shadow, and that will apply it to everything inside of that group folder. Alright, something like that. Kind of helps them pop off the background a little bit. And then you still have your original layer on the very bottom, and that's what we started with. And here's where we ended up. So that's it, guys. The top 5 ways that you can start improving your design work right now. I hope that you found some of these tips useful, and if you've liked this video, be sure to click the like button, share it, subscribe, tweet about it, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.